Okay, welcome to the Wednesday meeting of the VOCC. We think we have a pretty full schedule today, so we'll try and keep moving along. Savannah, I'll just pass it to you.
Okay, good afternoon. Savannah Clement, Deputy Director of Public Services. A few weeks back, maybe even a month or so, Millig came to present our final kind of cost estimation proposal to the board. And at that time, there was some direction given to Lauren with Millig to look into costs and a proposal for LED lighting upgrades at the Hall of Justice. So they've been putting in a lot of time and effort into coming up with, I think, a pretty good proposal for us today. And so I'm actually just going to pass it over to Lauren and let her run the show.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll talk through the scopes and some of the things we found, and then we'll talk about the price. Okay, so we looked at, I'll just refresh everyone's memory that this building, built in 1974, has irregularly shaped atypical T-grid and ceiling tiles. 2x4 is typical. These are, I think, 24 by 60 inches. So replacing, there's a lot of broken tiles, there's a lot of stained tiles, there's a lot of mismatch and discoloration. The grid itself is, it really contributes to kind of a dingier look. And then the light fixtures that are there sit in these irregular, these extra long grid, and they have a spacer panel at each end. You also have ceiling diffusers for the HVAC system, grills that also fit into the irregularly shaped grid. So in order to, we explored a LED lighting upgrade, a LED retrofit of just replacing the lights and leaving the old fixtures and leaving the old tiles. We also included in the base project, just cleaning up the grid, taking the tiles down, painting them and painting the grid just to improve the appearance a little bit. So we went back and we had a 2-day walk with a lighting contractor. We had ceiling contractors come through and did a lot of kind of design. So we'll tell you about what we found. So the lighting scope includes the basement, the first floor and the second floor, not touching the third floor. It's not used very much. They don't run very many lights. I think that you know, the county can update lights in the small amount of square footage that's used up there. We would be putting in brand new fixtures in all areas that are getting new ceilings. There are a few places in the basement that have a hard lid or a different kind of ceiling that's not getting replaced. In those areas, we would just do a less expensive LED linear tube retrofit of the existing fixtures. And that lighting install includes all the material, labor, permits, disposal. If you have if you have certain kind of ballast, certain kind of fixtures, we have to recycle them and treat them properly. They can have mercury. Cleanup, 1-year workmanship. We would get a utility rebate, which includes filling out applications and having a walkthrough and that sort of thing. And the new fixtures would be properly seismically tied to the deck. Lighting controls was a topic of quite a bit of conversation. Current energy code requires something called luminaire level lighting controls, LLC. That involves having a little driver and a wireless communication device in every fixture, and I think there's 1,000 or so, and being able to control the lights kind of individually, which added significant additional cost to the project. We had, I think, 2 or 3 meetings with the code official to try to explain to them that we're already reducing the wattage of this building by like 60%. And this addition of these luminaire, showed some calculations that the addition of these luminaire level controls really isn't going to provide any more value for the county. And we were successful on the second or third attempt to get a variance to not do the luminaire level lighting controls. However, that said, we do this work all the time. If this was our building, we would still put in the wall switch occupancy sensors in small offices that turn those offices off. They're not very expensive. They're just a slight adder cost for a typical switch. And we would still do that, even though we did get a waiver. So that's something for you all to decide if you'd like to do that or not. The ceiling scope, again, addresses the basement, first and second floors, and that's all areas of the basement that have that atypical grid. So there's small square footage in the basement not included. It would be new T-grids, tiles, materials, demo, install, recycling of all those materials that are there. You can see in the picture on this slide that right next to that light fixture, you can see one of those HVAC, two of those HVAC diffusers. Those are the size of the atypical grid. So we have approximately 200 supply diffusers and 110 return diffusers that need to be replaced to fit into the new grid. So then those need to just be tied into the ductwork that's there, which is a material cost. It is a real pain of this project. We also, I skipped a bullet point here. We have to relocate and tie up all of the IT security, fire alarm, smoke detection, wires, controls wiring, everything that runs above the ceiling that has gone into that building over the last 50 years. When we take that grid out, we need to secure it all and tie it up to the deck, and then keep it connected during the construction period, and then secure it to the new ceiling when the new ceiling goes in. So each of your little smoke detectors, all of those things need to be cut in. And so we had to do a comprehensive kind of survey and count of all of that kind of thing, which is fairly substantial in this building, particularly with its use type. What's that?
Tied down to the grid that's there now.
A lot of it's just laying on top of the tiles that are there, or cut into them with a flanged, so it's just sitting on the tile, but hanging through into the space if it's like the light fire smoke detector and stuff. So and then we need to properly secure kind of all of the lights and all of the and the new ceilings, which will be a huge added benefit of this is the airplane cable with hooks. I mean, there's a different way that they secure this stuff now, and extra seismic reinforcement that they put in per seismic code that they did that you don't currently have in the 1955 or 1974 construction. Well, so we discovered another issue, and this did increase the project cost a little bit. What we discovered is that there are a lot of in the original construction, there were lots of open office areas that have been since infilled with walls and to make individual offices. The picture you're looking at shows how a wall is built and it's simply bolted into the ceiling grid. It is not braced or connected to the deck above. So these walls are sort of floating there, and the only stabilization that they have is that one bolt that bolts them into the ceiling grid. And what you're going to see on the next page and the next two pages are the first and the second floor, where the green walls are properly braced walls that are tied to the deck above. And every one of the red walls is a wall that was not original to the 1974 construction and is simply bolted into the existing T-grid, which is not ideal. It's
That's
not
the whole building.
proper. It's the worst on the first floor. If you look at the second floor, there's only a handful on the second floor. But and most of the walls on the first floor are not tied to the deck.
What was this, a warehouse in 74?
It looks like it, don't it? Nobody lived there.
They may have done it to save costs in construction. I mean, who knows? Because the first floor really doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to why that would be so open on that left side.
So what that means is that this is a pretty significant seismic risk. There's nothing, there's nothing structural that those are connected to at all. I went back a couple slides because I kind of skipped a couple bullet points on the ceiling one. So the solution here is to use a 2x4. Actually, I don't know if it's for sure a 2x4. We have a detail of this, but a 45-degree angle, a bracing piece every like 4 to 6 feet along those walls to tie those walls to the actual decking. And then the ceiling grid would be properly installed and each of those walls would be independently connected to the grid and no longer sort of floating there.
Oh, this is probably a little far-fetched, but if somebody were to trip and fall into one of those walls, it's likely that it could detach itself and fall over. Because I know how strong these things are, the whole tiles, and they're not very.
No. In the case of,
I don't think you could do it tripping and falling on it, but.
I don't think
yeah,
tripping
if
and
you got-
falling,
if you got
but-
in a wrestling match.
but certainly if there was
There
an
was an
earthquake
earthquake.
or if there was a, some kind of event where, you know, a major bookshelf or something very weighty, some large piece of equipment was to fall, yeah, it is a pretty, and it would pull down a large section of the grid,
Yeah.
lots of areas around there.
Are they injured in the floor also? No?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can get you the answer to that.
Would the,
Probably not.
in just a curiosity question, instead of having to go to the upper deck, could you go from wall to wall and just basically like it was framed in underneath there? And would that be permissible for one, for the earthquake code? And for two, make it easier to rebuild the ceiling grid? I don't know the answer to that, but.
Yeah. So, what we have is that the ceiling grid runs throughout the entire space and then the wall comes up and meets under it.
Right,
The proper way that this would be done would be that the walls connect to the deck above and then the ceiling grid is laying in each room. And to my understanding, that is the path we are pursuing. However, I can definitely ask if there's any efficiencies to other ways. Our team has done a bit of work on this and I think there's definitely I've seen architectural detail of how you should properly brace these. And so I could definitely ask some questions about alternate ways to brace
obviously,
them.
looking at that picture, the wall did not line up with the
Right.
center of the ceiling grid.
Right,
It's
yeah.
off center. So those tiles are gonna have to be different sizes to match in each room now, right?
Yes, the ceiling will drop down by an inch or two as well, so that the wall extends above it. That's what that's how it's been described to me,
The ceiling is gonna be lower than it is right now.
just by about 1 to 2 inches.
So according to this picture, the ceiling right now just abuts up against the ceiling tile.
Yes. So the concept as it's been described to me is that the ceiling the wall will attach to the deck and the grid will sit just right under where the top of the wall is.
Well, see, I wanna think about this for a minute. If that's true, if you're just gonna lower the ceiling, why would you have to remove the whole grid? As far as having to re-support all of the wiring and stuff up there that's laying at that level anyway, if the new ceiling is gonna be below it, why couldn't you just leave it on the existing grid and put the new grid underneath it?
I will ask that question. If there's areas where, so you mean just leave it in place and like you've
Take
seen
the
a
tiles
roof built on
down.
top of another roof, like, because that was the least
Yeah, you
expensive way
take the
to do
tiles
it.
down and they're gonna be at a new level underneath that level. Even if you took the T frames off the bottom and left
Part of it, actually, is that this is not a standalone project. This is part of the HVAC project and they have to cut portions of the grid, they're already gonna take down like a third of the grid in each space because they have to get ladders and we're gonna be installing large pieces of equipment above the ceiling. So it may just have been like, let's clear it all out and, because we're gonna clear out, 50% of it anyway.
Okay,
But I can certainly ask because the areas that, for most, say an office on the first floor, we already have to cut out about the half that's closest to the hallway, because all the main trunks and all the main ducts run through the hallways. So the part of the space that's closest to the perimeter of the building could potentially stay put. We have the we have the air diffusers with flexi duct that comes down and then goes in those ceiling diffusers. So if you put another ceiling below that, I don't know if you could take that duct out and put another one, if you'd have to extend the flexi duct down. So there's a few things to think about there, but we can certainly explore it. Yeah. So, okay, so that's a unexpected. We did not, it's not uncommon to find an office that got a divider wall or something that doesn't go all the way up, but it's, the extent was pretty surprising. So there's some additional costs. When I was here before, I told you that we were estimating the cost of the ceilings and lights to be between $750 and $1 million. The total project cost today with the scope as just described is about 1.1 million for Millig's turnkey cost to you, some taxes on and DES fees on that to bring it to about 1.2 million, 1,213,000. There's going to be about a $30,000 to $35,000 utility incentive and about $34,000 of utility and maintenance savings annually, with about half of that being the energy savings. And then including the utilities incentive, the net cost of what we just described would be 1.182. Now, a couple of things, additional options to consider. There's kind of three things that you all need to make decisions about if there's parts of this, or if this project is something that you'd like to move forward with. One, the eliminating the occupancy sensors in the offices. And second was suggested, I think just conversationally in some of our meetings, well, some of the areas of the basement, public really doesn't go down there. If we really needed to VE some part, we could pull some of the areas of the basement and just leave the old lighting in there, and still give the first and second floor and the parts of the basement that people are frequently in, give those a facelift. But there is some area of the basement that we could cut out, and that might cut out in the $100,000, maybe $150,000 range. We could find a little bit of additional or cost savings. The other item to consider is modernization of the first floor lobby, ceiling, and lights. So let's look at the next page. So currently that first floor lobby has a very unusual architectural design that's very dated. What this actually is those are like foam insets into that atypical grid size. And each little foam inset has a lens. And then there's about 4 feet of space to the deck. And up above the deck, there are like 150 linear tube lights attached to the deck. And then it's about 4 feet down. And then there's those lenses with those decorative foam insets. And those are really lightweight, light duty things that pop down into the ceiling grid. So in our discussions, we said, hey, let's give you guys the option to get rid of that 1974 vibe and put standard ceilings and just regular 2x4 ceiling grid and 2x4 fixtures in there. So the basic, just make it look like any other office space. That would be an added cost of about $100,000. If you wanted, obviously you get, this is your first floor lobby, this is where security is, this is where everybody walks into the building. A lot of lobbies have something a little bit more decorative. They might have pendant, they might have like lights that hang down or lights that are a little bit nicer. But we just wanted to give you the option. This is not included in the base scope. This is something that just is for something for you all to think about. But it would add about $100,000 to the project to give it kind of just a basic overhaul of like what a normal office would look like and get rid of that 1970, mid 1970s vibe there.
So otherwise, if we do keep it, that decorative element in place, it would just be LED lights.
It would just be LED lights attached to the deck. We would
Mhm.
just do a tube replacement. So it's relatively inexpensive to leave it looking like this.
Mhm.
That's why it doesn't actually like, I was hoping it, it would offset, there would be some offset of costs and then some additional costs, but we would just get above this ceiling, do a tube replacement, put this right back the way that it is. And you would have about, 150 lights up there that have a huge, huge foot candles above that ceiling. And then a small amount of that light filters down through and it kind of looks like skylights.
So there's 150 lights in that and it's still not that bright. We're
No.
obviously losing light
Mm.
transferring through whatever that is, because if we had 150 lights right on the wall, we'd probably need glasses to walk through there.
Oh, yeah.
If this had, imagine this has rows of back-to-back 2x4s, like 5 feet apart across this whole room. That's how many lights are up there. So we can reduce the number of light fixtures by half and then reduce their energy usage by another 60% and properly light that area better than it is now. So it adds a little bit of utility incentive, a little bit of energy cost savings, but it's an aesthetic, it's an aesthetic facelift. And then, like I said, a lot of lobbies, maybe you take it one step up, but we haven't explored that at all. But we could certainly look at more, a more decorative approach there, but. So,
Take down the decoration, remove half the lights and leave it look like an unfinished barn. Well, that works for me.
the industrial look.
I was thinking we could take 2 of these really cool pendants from the back and then maybe put them.
Yeah.
Hang a couple chandeliers in there, something that reflects like a rainbow.
Yeah.
I thought, can we go back to the page 4?
Yes.
The picture of that wall on the ceiling, under the ceiling.
Yep.
A thought occurs to me, I don't see any suspension holding that ceiling up. I'm wondering if those walls were put in and that was then, all that grid work was put on top of the walls first, rather than, usually you have a suspended ceiling, you have stuff that's hanging down from the upper deck, and I don't see anything hanging down from the upper deck suspending that ceiling.
I have a handful of pictures up above from, taken from a cell phone up above the wall. So it's possible we just didn't capture any in this picture, but I'll forward on to these, to the facilities department, a few other pictures, and we can certainly go up there and stick our head above it.
Yeah, to your point, Commissioner, I see what you're saying. It is almost like it was a design, like it was designed in that way, which would account for why those walls were never completed upon construction. They were, anyway, so yeah, and that wall doesn't look like it looks like almost like a cubicle wall.
Like it was
That
manufactured.
hole looks like it's got one of those latches that goes into it.
Yeah, like it was manufactured
It's a
and designed that way.
manufactured wall. They stood it up and it looks to me like they built the ceiling on top of it. This is, maybe there's something I'm missing. I sure don't see it in that picture. And I can see a lot of ceiling space in that picture that's nothing holding it up from obvious reasons. Okay.
So if that's the case, Lauren, and it was kind of, designed and constructed in that way, does that, would we be able to do some research on that and see if they're modular walls, maybe they're lighter construction, so they're not, I don't know.
I know that we've already talked to Mike, the code official, who felt that bracing these walls was a code issue was
Sure.
something that needs to be done. So beyond that, I don't personally know, but Marcelo, our site superintendent, and Jason have spent, Marcelo and Jason from your facility group developed this map and identified, went and looked above the ceiling in every one of these spaces. So I feel like they probably have a better idea,
Yeah.
which we can certainly get some additional information from them.
I think that's a good point because what if it was that way and now we're messing with the integrity of the structure itself, not knowing that, and we don't realize that until we start pulling it apart.
Right. And if we don't touch it, we're still under the 1970s code,
Yeah.
right? So.
Once you start to work
Mhm.
on it, it would seem to me in this day and age, if we know this is an issue and we're gonna do some work and we don't bring it up to
Mhm.
code, that we probably sit on some liability exposure would be my guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, once we start taking it apart, we're in trouble.
I think to this point, it's not just a lighting replacement. We're now opened up another couple of issues.
So you've given us a lighting bid and then you're saying to shore these up so we got seismic value we
That's
should be
right.
at
Mhm.
is another 100, whatever that was.
No, let's go back to the table. It's basically 1.2 million. That includes, all the lighting, all the ceilings, and all the wall bracing. That's all included there.
Oh.
So
yeah,
that
that's
takes
right.
care of the red
That
lines?
takes care, yes, that's why this
Oh,
is
okay.
a little over $200,000 more than
Mhm.
what I told you it was gonna be a month ago.
Okay.
What it doesn't include is the upgrade in the look of the lobby.
Doesn't
Oh.
include
Correct.
upgrading the look of
The
the
lobby
lobby.
was the,
Was the add-on.
I got you, okay.
So we
thank
have
you.
an upgraded facility, but our lobby would still be Brady Bunch.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good-
Currently, we're calling this the base scope. So the kind of bare minimum to get the building, the lights will be seismically properly braced and tied to the deck. The walls will be properly tied to the deck. The ceiling grid will be modern and proper. You'll be able to buy regular tiles for it and, everything. And then the sort of aesthetic and functional, but it'll be better lit, and that is where security is. The lobby is the adder.
What is it like? This is a question for you guys. What's it like when we have to work on those lights up there in the lobby? Is it labor intensive or is it easy to get to? Do you know? What do we have to go through for that?
I don't know if Mike, I do know that recently, Josh, one of our facilities maintenance techs was tasked with replacing a lot of those bulbs. And it was very time consuming. To what extent it looked like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's Mike Moss, Public Services Director. When they opened up that grid to look in there, they were amazed by, I don't think staff knew how many lights or bulbs were in there and how many were actually burnt out at that time. I want to say maybe 2/3 were out. And so it did take quite a while because you got to take off each individual section. You just can't crawl in there and start changing them. So it was a lot of man hours.
But he's changed the light bulb since 1974. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly
Nobody knew till he got in there looking at it.
So, almost like, think of your office, you have to take out the ceiling tile above you to go above that to get to change the bulb and then put that back in place and move to the next section and do it again and again and again, 100 so
Yeah.
many times.
So if it's 4 feet above
Yes.
that
Yeah.
foam decoration. How
Correct.
do you access it? You get a man lift in there or a ladder?
I think it's ladder.
I think we would, I think we have a lift
This is
estimated for the install, for a new install, because it's not just changing out a light bulb. You're gonna be up there for several hours per fixture or whatever.
So in the original bid for the general scope of the whole project, the lobby is included just to replace the lights, or are we
To
leaving it
replace
alone?
just to do an LED tube and
Retrofit.
pop that LED tube into the fixture, the
That's
fixture
it. So
that's
just
already
converting
there.
it from whatever it is to LED.
Just converting it from fluorescent to LED.
Every one of them or every other one?
It's every one, although obviously input, the base scope that the lighting contractor would come in to do would say, I'm gonna take all the all the traditional inefficient lighting and replace it with LED lighting in the most cost-effective manner possible. So you wouldn't really have a light level improvement or an appearance improvement. It would just eliminate, the LED tubes last about 5 times as long as the fluorescent tube. So it eliminates some maintenance cost, and we can take out the ballast, which is also another point of failure. We bypass the ballast with the LED tubes. They have an integral driver. So there's maintenance costs, savings, but other than that, it would look pretty much the same as it does now.
One thing that I didn't notice before or bring up was the side lights in that, the current first floor lobby that has the 2 pictures side by side. There's a lot of side lighting, around the top perimeter.
Yes, I believe that those, I have to check because I know that they did a walk and this building doesn't have that many can lights. It doesn't have, you see a lot of can lights in typical buildings. This building actually does not have almost any. And so almost, I looked at the spreadsheet, the line by line of where all the fixtures were going. And I think what those are is, I think those are linear fluorescent
Yeah,
ones on the side. So
Mhm.
those would be replaced
just
with
with
LEDs. Just
LEDs,
swap
like
them
for
out
like.
one for one.
Okay.
The default is to swap things out one for one with LEDs, and that's the least expensive way to do it. And unless we kind of get direction, otherwise, that's what we're doing. So
They do have the color strip, color changing lighting strips. I'm kidding.
that's right. And that'll be something that we can talk about
Oh.
closer to the time, but the county will need to decide what they want the color temperature to be,
Mhm.
a warmer or a bluer, a more yellow or a more blue.
Daylight sunglasses.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So those are all options.
I'd be curious to know what kind of maintenance has been going on in that lobby because a fluorescent tube loses 8 to 10% of its brilliance every year. So it will gradually get dimmer year after year after year till it's hardly working or goes out. LEDs will stay until they fail. So
Mhm.
if we replace all of those with LEDs, especially with a daylight, a warmer or a brighter color,
Right.
Yeah.
then that'll light up like
Sunglasses.
daylight sun in there.
Well, I'm usually of the persuasion if we're gonna make this right, that you don't find a more cost-effective time than the present. It doesn't seem if you wait that it's gonna get cheaper.
Yeah.
So I would be, and I think I'd lean the same way on this. If we're doing the other, let's take care of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if we're already taking it apart anyway.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so just to clarify, does that also include that first floor lobby addition change? The seismic and the addition? Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think so.
okay.
So we have final kind of hard bids on everything. Now it's just putting the documentation together, putting it in a formal proposal, the
So we'll
same
come back.
process.
Mhm.
So there'll be an actual down to the dollar to approve. And we've been talking, so we're under contract for the other project. We are talking with DES, but the most effective way to do this will probably, because we haven't actually started construction yet, we're leaning towards amending the original proposal
Mhm.
to include this amount instead of a change order, because it's not really a change order on the scope that we already started. It's really changing the
Prior
contract,
to.
which was always kind of how it was envisioned to be in the
And-
first place. So anyway, they're just details, but we'll get you a
We'll be back with a
Hard
harder
proposal.
proposal. But with that, just the contingency. So will that be changing that contingency price as well, on the total
The
proposal?
number
we
that
brought-
you see here includes a 3% contingency. We have a 5% contingency on the
Larger.
HVAC project that's very complicated and we're gonna get into walls and all kinds of stuff. This is a more knowable scope with less foreseen. So this already includes a 3%
Okay.
owner's held contingency, money we have to ask you for and you have to approve us to access, of 3% already in here.
And plus we
Addie,
do
go ahead,
more,
Mike.
I was gonna say more research on the walls and the T grid.
Yep, ask a few more questions
Mhm.
about that. I think, I believe in the original drawings, I think it'll be telling if the 1974 drawings does not show those walls or not, or shows the
Hmm.
walls or not. And if we have a drawing set where they show up and how long after that was, that'll help us figure out.
I believe I noticed that it said that if we do the lighting, it's gonna add a month to the project.
That's right. That is one thing I had to talk about. So the construction in the facility will happen in about 8 zones. So we will move through the building and each zone will be started and completed, and the new HVAC system for that will be started up. So the existing building's HVAC system will continue to operate. We'll build zone by zone, we'll build a new HVAC system for this pod in parallel to the existing system. And then we'll shut off the old system to that area, and we'll start up the new system to that area, move people into it, move on to the next pod. So each of those zones, adding the ceilings and lights will add a few days to each of those zones. And so over the course of making it through all 8 zones, it'll add about a month to duration. Now, not to speak on something that's very new, but we've been having some creative discussions about potentially looking at some different places to hotel folks, and we're working on some plans to potentially compress the construction a little bit. So if we can be successful at some of the newer conversations we've been starting to have about a new space that's available, we might be able to offset that a little bit, and it would be a wash, and that would be great. Everybody would like
Shorter.
like us to get out of their building as soon as
Yeah.
we can. So that's where it is. There'll be another set, the ceiling contractor would have already been there, but a lighting contractor, there'll be another set of contractors, another set of ladders, and a little bit more extensive work. We'll add a few days duration onto each zone.
Does adding the lighting project, do we trigger like a banding discount now
Which
for
kind
the
of
overall
discount?
cost?
Oh, it crosses, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, there sort of is, because and this is actually relevant. The site superintendent cost, we have one site superintendent from the first day of construction to the end, and 2 site superintendents assigned during the construction of the occupied spaces, which is a couple months, a shorter duration on either end, is when we're really gonna have multiple contractors going in multiple zones. We're gonna have 2 site superintendents. So you're not paying for any more site superintendent with this project. The site superintendent that's already on site is gonna manage this. The only thing you're paying for on site superintendent is the 1 additional month of construction duration. So it is a discount compared to if you were just gonna do it as a standalone project and you needed, a site superintendent on site for 3 months to get this done. But that's somewhere where the site superintendent's hours are actually logged on his timesheet, and he's paid for on an hourly rate per actual hour spent. So if we are able to reduce the construction duration by something we discover over the next month, that you would get that money back off of the guaranteed maximum price, because all of those hours have to be substantiated, reviewed and approved by your project manager at DES.
Do I recollect that new HVACs are going on the roof? Is that where they're going?
There are, I believe, like 6 condensing units going on the roof. Those are the outdoor heat rejection units. I believe there's 2 going in the parking lot for the basement zones. And there's also a large rooftop unit that'll go where the current cooling tower is placed. That cooling tower is very heavy. It's like 20,000 pounds. We're coming back with almost the same size of a rooftop unit. It's going to go right there. That rooftop unit's going to serve just the courts. So there's a mixture, a lot of the equipment's on the roof. And then there's a ventilation where the large existing air handler in that building is in the basement. There's going to be a large ventilation only unit down there as well.
Okay.
So there's both indoor and outdoor HVAC equipment.
And the reason for the large rooftop unit for the courts only was because it was a less invasive way. In the courts, it's a lot of wood paneling. It's not your traditional ceiling tiles like we're talking. So it was the best route to kind of continue the look and aesthetics without a really invasive construction
That's
schedule in
right.
there.
We've just been meeting with the courts and the kind of cut, we're gonna build the HVAC system that serves the courts in parallel to the HVAC system that you have now.
Mhm.
And then the cutover to that will only be like a 2-day disruption, maybe 3-day disruption, which is tying those courts. This was a decision that was made in about December, I think, after we had already designed putting the courts on the same VRF system that we're putting in the rest of the building. But the construction duration of that would have been about 3 to 4 weeks, which is just not feasible to have the courts down for really any amount of time other than a weekend sort of thing, weekend cut over. So, and it did not add additional cost to the project. So it was a break even, but better construction and cost savings related to schedule.
How
acceleration.
often are we gonna have courtrooms out of service during the week?
During construction,
Right.
the courts are moving, they are not going to hold court on Fridays. And so what we have worked out with the subcontractors, we have great subcontractors. We had a lot of subcontractor interest. There were a lot of people competing that really wanted this work. What we were able to get was at no additional cost to the county. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 410s. So we will be doing all day, 10 hours on Saturday, with the building empty on Sunday to spill over into if there's ever some sort of issue or something to clean up. No court on Friday, so 10 hours on Friday. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, the construction crews need to work around court. So they're going to start at 5 a.m. and go till about 9 and have kind of free reign of the building before people really get there and it's open to the public. And then they'll be quiet hours for the court hours. And that's all stuff we're working very closely. You saw us walking around today. We're actually going to be in this building on Fridays. The courts are going to use the GMR and this space on Fridays for specific dockets and non-jury trials and Zoom court.
Yeah, so technically there will be court 5 days a week, just not court on Fridays at the hall.
And they're also maximizing the juvie and
Mhm.
jail
Mhm.
courts that
For in
they're
custody.
moving as many as possible trials to the jail and juvie courts on Fridays as well. So they're going to have the same number of hours per week of court. But they're going to give us the HOJ on Fridays.
Okay. And go back to the discussion about the lobby. What did we decide about the Brady Bunch decoration? It was just gonna leave it and just do the lights, right? Or are we gonna take it down, do something different for decoration purposes, or?
My personal opinion is, since we're already there, upgrade it and do it right.
In my upgrade, it would be ceiling tiles
Ceiling tiles and
and the clear.
flat panel fixtures. Yeah. Okay.
So nothing too
Yeah, get it
fancy.
down where maintenance is easy.
Yeah. Because if you look at those pictures, on one of them, and this is definitely not a knock to anybody, but cleaning those things has got to be a pain. And they got to be dingy, and that glass we're losing light transfer, and
Yeah, they may have been white at one time.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
They're beige now.
yeah, smoky beige.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been cleaned about as often as the light bulbs have been changed
Yeah.
since 1974.
Well, we will, so we'll solidify this project and with the lobby, the kind of basic lobby LED fixtures and put that proposal together. I think it's going to make a huge difference. It's the first thing you see when you walk in the
Mhm.
building. So I agree.
Okay,
Okay, so we-
Anything else?
you good with that?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna, so we'll come back and when that hard proposal is finished, and I think we're gonna have the Sheriff's Department jump in next. They have an item to go over with the board.
I believe they have requested executive session, HR and Sheriff's Office, so they could take some time from Public Works, if that's okay with the chair.
So. Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
So-
job.
Is this the one that's performance of a public employee?
Yeah, one, and then have a civil service commission item for the board.
These don't have to be executive session, do they?
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Dave Handy with the Cowlitz County Sheriff's Office. So the Sheriff's Office, our hiring for deputies and office staff is governed by a local civil service commission. And it's not a body that's familiar to everybody, but so I'll just gonna kind of recap what they do. So civil service has existed in Washington State in one form or another for about the last 100 years. It was created to do away with the spoil system, or basically like to cronyism, where a political entity that won an election would come in, fire all the police officers or deputies and hire their own people. So Civil Service Commission oversees our hiring, the integrity of the process, and fairness and promotion. The Sheriff's Office Civil Service in Washington State is subject to RCW 41.14, which is slightly different than the service or the City Civil Service Commission. Generally, it's the same process, but it's unique to Sheriff's Office based on that RCW. The Cowlitz County Sheriff's Civil Service Commission is made up of 3 commissioners who all are all volunteers. They're subject to a 6-year term. There's one secretary examiner who is the sole employee of the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission's budget is separate from the Sheriff's Office. And the examiner paid position is very part-time, maybe 8 to 10 hours a month, if that. The Civil Service Commission can also oversee matters of discipline. There's a mechanism in there where if an employee appeals a disciplinary act, one route they could take is go to the Civil Service Commission. But with the collective bargaining agreements and everything like that, the Civil Service Commission does that very infrequently. The current commission consists of Richard Walmsley, he's the chairman, he's retired Air Force colonel. Steve McWilliams is a former Sheriff's Office Reserve Deputy and retired Waco's Wood Security Officer. And Denny Parkhill is retired Sheriff's Office Sergeant. Those folks have all served for several years. The reason I'm before you today is that Denny Parkhill and Steve McWilliams want to step down. So we have 2 applicants that have come forth and submitted applications through the board. And those folks are both retired from the Sheriff's Office. Historically, deputies have served on the Civil Service Board. They're by no means a rubber stamp. These guys understand labor law. They're part of the guild. It's Fred Taylor, who's been with the county since 1994. He's currently a sergeant. Brent Harris, who's since retired, has been with the Sheriff's Office since 1991, and both of those folks have expressed interest in pursuing these positions of the board. So basically, they're appointed at the Board of County Commissioners, or the entity that would appoint these folks to the board or approve of that process. So the current Civil Service Board is familiar with these 2 individuals, and they've endorsed them as well. So I'm just coming before the board to see if there's any questions or if that's something you'd entertain, having these 2 folks, Fred and Brent, approved to fill this vital position.
Sounds like you guys are comfortable with these.
We are.
Chairman.
And again, it's by no means a rubber stamp. This existing board has been great to deal with, but these guys the existing board folks have served quite a while, and they're retired, and they drive up from the south end of the county at least once a month to meet with us and kind of oversee, make sure what we're doing is fair and according to the law.
Any questions, concerns on your recommendation?
Concerns? I'm good.
Looks like we're good, Dave.
Okay, appreciate
Okay.
that. Thank you,
Thank
Commissioners.
you. Mm.
Hello, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. Dave also had a request for an executive session under performance of a public employee.
And how long?
Less than 10 minutes, I would
Less than
believe.
10 minutes. And then I know the board had another item under performance of a public employee, if you wanted to do those at the same time or wait until later.
Well, we got a lineup
Mhm.
going here, so I think that second one, I know what you're referencing, maybe we'll take that later.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll adjourn and get this done. Okay, back from an executive session, no decision rendered. Jessica, I will turn it over to you.
I have a request from the sheriff's office. They are requesting to swap their emergency management director and their coordinator positions. So they'd like to place the new coordinator at step 7 and the new director at step 7 of their new scales.
Okay,
And this would be an overall difference of about $247 a month.
month. Okay. I think we're not seeing any objection. I think you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mike? See how fast you can talk?
Mike Moss, Public Services Director. We'll go ahead and not do the last 2 items on the agenda, but we will talk about the solid waste agreement. The other 2 items, road striping program and admin roof. We'll talk about those on Monday. We'll come over.
We're okay with that?
Yep,
You're
it's
okay with
no-
that?
Nothing
Okay.
time sensitive. As you know, we've been working with agreement with NORPAC for a little bit for their disposing of their waste at the headquarters landfill. What you have in front of you is a agreement that has been signed by NORPAC. Sean's here to go over a few of the highlighted areas that might be of interest to you. Our recommendation is that the board signs this today, if you agree to these terms, and then put it on the agenda next Tuesday or the Tuesday after.
Sean Rowe, Public Works. Just some highlights on this agreement here. It is a 4-year agreement with a 2-year adder on it. It allows up to 200,000 tons to be delivered to the landfill with price breaks at 120,000 tons annually. CPI is 100% annual with a 1.5% minimum. And it's
It's 1.5% minimum and
100% annually of the CPI with a 1.5% minimum on it.
okay.
And like we said, it allows up to 200,000 tons annually with 150,000 minimum.
And it's broken down to that also maximum tons per month would be 20,000 tons because they do have high months and low months from their waste from the mill. And years past, if they have had extra waste, they do take it to a different landfill. So they can have arrangements to take it up the gorge, usually to a different landfill.
Yeah. And NORPAC has signed and agreed to this, and we're on pretty much par with the other industries we have down there, right?
Yeah, they signed yesterday and sent it over.
Okay.
So effective date was yesterday for their side.
Kudos to you guys for getting it done to where it's amicable for both parties.
Thank you.
Great job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good job. Thank you.
We will get it signed and done for you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. I appreciate that.
You got it right there. Oh,
You want-
yeah, good idea. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the solid waste disposal agreement as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the solid waste disposal agreement with NORPAC as presented. Any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor? Aye. Approved.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So, Larry, while you're moving up there, let me ask my colleagues here real quick, because I think we did a function yesterday where we added like a workshop item to our public meeting on Tuesday, and it seemed to go really well. And I think we felt that that was worth doing again. Are we in agreement with that?
I think so.
I was kind of thinking at least with the agencies, like when we have ecology and wildlife and them in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll ask clerk to try and move those upcoming meetings maybe to a Tuesday.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Wood, we'll turn it over to you.
My name is Larry Wood. I'm really excited to get to talk for a little bit. I submitted a PowerPoint I put together when this idea originated, and I updated a little bit. It's not that this is the way that it has to be. I also wanted to notify the commissioners that my architect, who I've worked with conceptualizing tiny house plans, was able to come. So I know that we're not going to take a long time here, but I do have Dave Bertel, and he's done a lot of work for me, and I'm super happy with him, and he even brought his team. So maybe he could step
Does
over there.
he want to take one of the seats
Yeah,
there with the
yeah,
microphone?
that'd be great.
More than welcome to.
Great. So I'll just go through this real quick, and I would really welcome you to ask any questions. I just revised this from a few years ago, but I think it provides a background of who I am and what I've done, which I think is credible, because if I'm not credible, then this is kind of a incredible idea, and you guys are, I think, potentially getting a lot, but it's also, there's risk because it's not been done. And so I think it's a good idea, but we'll just maybe go through the slides. I'll comment. I won't read everything probably, but let's go ahead and go through. I'm just reflected here that the Cowlitz County Housing Plan encourages creative new ideas. And so I think people could go back to that. But what's interesting is this idea is not permitted the way that I would hope that it would be done anywhere in the state of Washington. I've not seen what I hope that we can do. And it's interesting that, as you know, the city of Longview has new staff under new leadership. And I worked really hard to try to get in and influence. They don't really have a tiny home ordinance, but they did come up with, I think they called it a cottage home or something like that. I worked really diligently to get in. And when I spoke with Nick Little, the new community public works, well, it's not public works, he's community development director. He said, Larry, that's great that, you're talking to the county about doing a tiny home project. We love public input. I go, well, the old regime didn't, because I tried as hard as I could. I'm neighbors with the head of the planning commission, and they kicked me out, wouldn't let me comment, and I don't love what they came up with. And so, but it's a step in the right direction, but I just want to say that. But I think that the new leadership was mortified that a very active developer was not allowed to even comment. And so I think they're willing to revise it, and I'm sure the council would do what's best for the community. Next. I just not going to focus on me. I brought pictures of each one of 3 developments I've done. The 3 residential communities. The first one is a little one by Baker's Corner, Solo Point. I'll show it to you in a second. A larger one is a 57 unit, 55 plus targeted community. out across from the newer middle school on Mount Solo Road, and then the townhomes that are on the other side of Baker's Corner. I developed quite a large storage on 38th Avenue after buying the first 20% of it, and then I've expanded it 4 times. And then I have permission to build the biggest multifamily complex in the history of Cowlitz County. So that's my resume. And so this isn't a challenging project, but it's innovative and I'm really excited about it. I really feel like it can make a huge difference. Next. This is just my first little gated community, 17 units. Next.
How long has that been around, Larry?
I started that in 1999.
1999?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I didn't know what I was doing, it was almost my last project. But then this one came along and this was a raging success. This is probably the most successful project I've ever done. And it's 57 homes. It has a community and has a clubhouse, and it really reflects the flavor that I would like this tiny home community to represent. I don't want to do anything that I wouldn't be proud to have my name on. I'm not thinking my name gets to be on it, but it's my brand extension. And so I'm really proud of each one of these projects. So I'll show you the next one. That's an overhead view of that 57 unit. Keep going. Now this one, Dave Bertel helped me design. He didn't help on the first 4 units. I built those for sale. I actually lost this project in 2008 and I bought it back, interestingly, in 2016. And I finished it in 2018 with Dave Bertel's help. And I've done other projects with him smaller than this, but I really appreciate him. And we actually revised the floor plan 3 times to kind of better fit the need, because it's very challenging to build a duplex that's only 42 foot wide with only front access. But I think these are very attractive. I think the next picture might show that. But that's my most recent work. And again, Dave designed those and we chose the colors, and those kind of colors, I wouldn't choose the same colors, but when you choose a common trim and then use high quality cement board siding and, quality windows, quality construction, everybody loves that. And when I show people, I was actually in LA at a conference and I showed some people this picture in LA and they thought that was a beautiful thing. So there's not a lot of buildings that are from Longview that get people's attention in LA, but I'm really proud of what Dave helped me do there. Next. This is a large project. This is the 350-ish units that are approved on Ocean Beach Highway. I'm not going to try to make this all political, but I didn't quite make it in under the first 4 years. I bought it at the beginning of the Trump administration. I was so stretched. I didn't have my financing all in order until the end of the Trump administration. And when Biden came in, he changed the stormwater rules, radically intensified the development standards. And so I was kind of been stuck on the sidelines. I'm actually kind of probably happy now that I'm not in the middle of the biggest project of my life, because I think we're probably experiencing a housing downturn. But it has been great for me to work through this process. And once again, Dave helped me with the design of all those units, because that's not exactly the plan that we ended with, but I've already paid for and designed all the units, and I'm super happy with Dave's help. Next. This is just the concept, and maybe I'll skip over this really quick. I'm going to read just the beginning of it. I envision a public-private partnership, and I think it should be as a for-profit developer. We have a lot of high feelings with a 501c3, but the problem I'm realizing, as I understand more now about a 501c3, you have a board-owned asset. So essentially, you guys, the idea is for the county to provide a current piece of land, use monies that are set aside for maybe homeless, or I think the tax, I don't know how you describe the money, but it would be monies that you already have that could be developed the lots. And then I would come in and nobody's gonna lend a nonprofit $3 or $4 million to build this. I have to personally sign for it. And so if it's a nonprofit, then Larry Wood is forced to personally sign for a $4 million loan. And I'm not so comfortable about that. So I'd rather have a standard LLC. But if we have to do 501c3, I'm open to it. I've had one before. And I just talk about the amount of land and about how I want to make sure it's totally done above board in a way that fully protects the county. And I know that's obvious that you're not going to let it if it's not that way. Rick, I think you've been in lending, and so you understand that I want to do this the most efficient way that I can. And in talking to one of the credit unions, they are open to the idea of doing a land lease. They haven't done it in Cowlitz County, but they said they wouldn't want a super lean debt service coverage ratio on it. So they threw out 1.35, 1.4, which would mean there'd be a little meat on the bones. I'm willing to totally commit to not make a penny during the year of construction. And it's not really going to be a part of my lifestyle or anything. It's just, but I'm pledging a few $1 million, and then it would, once they're stabilized, it would totally stand on its own. It'd be at a 1.4, 1.35 debt service coverage ratio. It's a very strong asset. And my idea is that the county would own I would be leasing the land. You would be receiving, essentially, I could imagine this would be an $8 or $9 million project that you would basically, you would get it at the end of the 40 years is what I proposed. That's negotiable, but it would give me plenty of time to get the buildings all paid for, and I won't be around in 40 years. I did get a hold of the head of the Haswa, and we had talked to them about it before. They're very interested if this was able to come to fruition. So I think that I need to be able to transition it to somebody that you would trust. I would be willing to, do it subject to if I sold it to a private equity developer that just maximized the rents, it would be not fulfilling the fulfillment of what, I think you guys hope to do and what I want to do. So it's my idea that Haswa is the natural person. And I've talked to Jennifer a number of times, and I know that if we put this in their pipeline and gave them 2 years to get the funding, they'd be so happy because it would have so much equity. It would just be a tremendous asset. And then, maybe they would release it from you or whatever at the end of time. But I think that's probably mostly what I would say. My goal would be that I think that here's what I think that this would cost. I think in talking to people who are large builders in Longview, I don't want to say their name, but I did get a number. And they said 155 a foot is what, like a 2,000 square foot home you can build. You could go vertical on a 2,000 square foot home for about 155 a foot. I think there'd be a 25% premium because they're so small. I think if it's a 400 square foot house, it would probably be, that would push the price from like 62,000 to 70,000, 75,000 would be my cost to have the unit built. And then I would attribute $10,000 per unit toward the clubhouse. So I think we're looking at a debt service of about 90,000 at the top end for each 400 square foot home. And so at a 6.5% interest rate, that would be a payment of about $610 approximately. And so if you back in the debt service coverage ratio, it should put it well in the middle of the 700s, would be a very realistic rent, which there would be hundreds of people in Longview that would love to rent in a new community for just the 700s. And so my commitment to you is that I'm not going to raise the price based on my ability to make more profit. It's not my goal to make profit. I want to do a duplicatable experiment, and I hope a number of people would copy this project across different communities. And so I want to have full transparency, and it'd be my passion to do it. But I do feel like it has to make money after it's built. You know, I'm not gonna feed it for 30 or 40 years.
I don't blame you on, on that.
Do you guys have any questions? I think that's
So you think
summarizes.
it'd take, you're talking about like 3 acres or a little better is what it would to,
Yeah. Dave, I'm going to ask you this question. We had talked about a density of 10 units per acre. You know, and that depends on the fire marshal and, you know, interpretation of things. But do you think that of the smaller homes that's, we could also do a duplex? We could do duplexes that might allow us, you know, a little closer. But what density do you think in a rectangular environment that we could get? He doesn't want to stack them and I don't want to stack them like, I don't want it to look like Hope
Yeah.
City, right? You know, just a bunch of boxes. I mean, it's got to have some,
so if you're 3+ acres, a little over 3+ acres, you're probably talking about roughly 30 living units.
right,
Plus a centralized clubhouse
right,
type thing.
right. Yeah.
We do have a very rough sketch that shows 40 units.
Yeah, I guess
Do you
there's
have,
another
if you have
picture.
a button over there that, so the green light show, there you go.
Is it on now?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
sorry.
you. Thank you.
I was just saying that we do have a kind of a little sketch showing a layout. I don't know, is that part of your presentation, Larry?
It is, I forgot about it. It might be the last, it's the green image.
How do you, because I've heard this from others, how do you, and you probably do it with your current units, and you can never be 100% sure, but how do you what do you put in place that says that these things aren't going to be slum units, for lack of a better
Well,
word?
Well, I have I think a passionate answer for that. I'm not gonna build crap. You know, I'm gonna critique the poor neighborhood of Longview historically is the Highlands. And developers have different standards traditionally. I get the good fortune of living in a house that Dave designed up on top of City View. And I'm going to use the same cement board siding, the same high caliber roofing, and I'm not putting in T111. And I'm not saying anything against somebody who lives in a T111 house, but that's the most affordable way to build. And I'm not going to build the most affordable way that these could be done. I want to build the best way that I've done every project I've done that I've showed you pictures of. They're always
Yeah.
cement board siding with quality materials. And then when you bring quality management, it's easy to keep it looking good because there's going to be so many people that want to live there. We have that luxury on West Point, the rental townhomes that I showed at the end that were the nice colors. There's so many people who want to live there. It's just so easy and people stay there for a long time. And that's what's going to happen here too. In fact, we might almost have to have a policy that, I don't know, we'll see, but it'll be a highly desired neighborhood. This is what I would love to do. And I mean, I might be opening up a business, but this is the original master plan that I've seen for the fairgrounds didn't know what to do with the back 4 acres off Paradale. And that's a kind of a scale drawing of just an initial concept. And I know that you guys have thought about, or the previous group had thought about an RV park. I think there's a lot of problems with an RV park, but you know, I'm partial to this idea. I'd love to get a chance to do it somewhere. There's other places that could be done as well, but that would be one great place.
One of the other places I've kind of looked at, the old plant, Longview plant.
The water plant?
Yeah.
Well, that would be a great place.
Would that
Yeah, yeah, that would be
type of
great.
thing fit too?
Yeah, it would be really good.
It seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me because we've talked about this a couple years, if we want to take another step forward, we have to identify a piece of land somewhere. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it could be just a little tiny piece of land, but then it would, you know, you really can't, if you're allowing $10,000 per unit in the mortgage to cover the clubhouse, if you have 10 homes,
Yeah.
you're really kind of only getting another home. So you've got to have probably 2.5 acres to justify a clubhouse. But I really think you have to think about living it. These are larger than a hotel room, but they're not a lot bigger than that. And so they're not going to have laundry, but they will have a functional kitchen and a functional, they'll have a queen size bed. And those are some of the floor plans that we
they-
might use.
They sound real similar, and I think, and I could be wrong in this, I think the Campus Towers project, they're pretty much this size or right in
Well,
this area.
those, I'd say, Dave, you drew those, they're bigger than 400.
Are they a little
Yeah,
bigger?
they're a bit bigger. Yeah,
Okay,
they're probably closer to 600 or 700.
okay.
But 400 square feet is really small, but it's really doable for somebody who's bootstrapping, and I mean, they just want a chance. These are the most underserved people housing wise across our state. Absolutely. There's nothing new that you could show me that is permanent, that is under $800 a month for rent. It's just impossible. This is like the only way I can think of doing it. And you could go smaller than 400 square feet, but then it's like, why? I think this is the sweet spot. People can come up with that much money. They can work a minimum wage job and very easily afford $750 a month. And either one of those locations are close enough people could walk.
I would say that it is essentially a cottage housing development. It's just a very small cottage, smaller than a lot of the typical cottage housing developments there are around the Pacific Northwest. But it's not just, I don't think it's just a tiny house development. I've seen those and they're pretty much, linear and kind of boring looking. This is developed more like a cottage housing development with winding trails, and landscaping and so it'd be attractive.
I know people point out to me often, the development as you're headed into Chehalis,
Yeah.
between Napa Vine and Chehalis, and
Yeah.
it's
That's the most
basically just
efficient way to
2
do
rows
it.
of, yeah.
That's the most efficient way. That's like the Costco way of doing it. And
Yeah.
I like to shop Costco. I don't want to live at Costco.
Yeah.
But I have to say, if I didn't have a track record of attractive, successful, I've owned West Point. There's some homes that I built there originally in 2007. So they're 18 years old. They still look great. I mean, I have painted them and I put a new roof on them, but this is going to be a great looking project that I think would be a cutting edge idea that people in Washington would come to. I guarantee if I get to do this in Longview, Kelso, I would definitely use the convention center and start a tiny home convention, because there is no example of this level that's in our state. I mean, Oregon's got a few, but we don't have any that I know of.
Larry, I gotta tell you, thank you for coming and talking to us about this, and I'm grateful that you have the willingness and the creativity to come up with this kind of stuff, because I think it's people like you that are gonna help us solve the problems that we face as a society with regards to, in this case, housing. Couple of things that I would contend with you, though. The quality of the house, to the chair's question about the slumlord, I think that the quality of the house is a moot point. And I think what a better, it's a price point for people. I think the $700 is what's going to be attractive to people, not the look of the housing, because you can go to the neighborhoods that you talked about and the rent in those places is $1,700, right? So
Yeah.
I think the price point is more of what is going to be attractive to people as opposed to the siding. Okay, that's my personal opinion on that. The other thing is, there's people in the crowd who haven't had the opportunity to listen to your plan in its fullness. So
Right.
could you clarify exactly what it is that you want from the county and what that relationship looks like?
Yeah.
What it is that you need from us in order to proceed? Because one of the questions that I have, well, go ahead and do that first.
Well, what I envision is a municipality that has a piece of raw developable land with all utilities available. But every municipality has excess land. They don't necessarily want to sell it, so they're just sitting on it. And we've described two pieces that would work very well. Both I think are in the jurisdiction of Longview. And then you guys have that, is it 1/10 of 1% of sales tax that has gone towards, I would kind of think of it as like housing homeless funds. What, I don't know what it was attributed for, but I think there's a couple $1 million in there. I think that what I would hope, and I talked to Jim Walsh, and here's the creative idea. Jim Walsh got a legal opinion. I said, Jim, you know, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I think you do. One of the biggest hurdles to overcome with affordable housing is prevailing wage. And so underground people essentially get close to prevailing wage. So it's not a big deal to pay prevailing wage for underground. But I asked Jim for a legal definition, and he gave me an official legal definition from Olympia, that if you use prevailing wage underground, you're not required to use prevailing wage above ground. And so I'll be able to go in with production residential builders and essentially normal subcontractors. I've built over 25 homes a year. So I've built millions of dollars worth of homes a year, but I wasn't sophisticated enough to have the accounting and everything to be a prevailing wage contractor. That's a pretty elite group of people that really specialize in that. And so what I'm targeting would allow ordinary companies like New Rock or whatever to, you know, which I think parallel the size of my company, and they could assist in building these. Or, you know, I probably will start my own company again, but the goal would be that we would consider leasing the land, and you have to have a really strong person with a relationship with the bank, because I'm asking to be able to eventually encumber the land. I talked to the credit union. They said, we're never going to take money back from, you know, this kind of a situation. We want to make sure the asset is really strong and it's just not going to fail. And that's why they said we don't want a low debt service coverage ratio, but it would just sail through. I've talked to management companies and they would love to do this. And so it would kind of go on autopilot after it was done, but there would be unique management challenges possibly. But I just envision, I'm thinking $1 a year to rent it, and then you get the whole thing back at the end of the time frame. And I think about you guys. You have a hard thing. You're leasing a very valuable piece of land along with a few $100,000 worth of improvement, and you're leasing that for $1 a year. Yeah, but we're going to get back $9 million worth of homes. And we're going to own it free and clear at the end of that time. And you could choose to do with it whatever you wanted. You know, I think it'd be totally reasonable just to have a property manager hired for the county. You need to make, you know, good money once it's paid for. So that kind of, is that summarized good enough, the response?
Yeah, I was mainly wanting it for clarification purposes for the public. So I understood that, you know,
Yeah,
from our
okay.
previous conversations. But a question for you is, I understand your interest in helping the county, and I'm grateful for that. I really am. But why, as a for-profit, why wouldn't you just, like, say, for example, come to the county and say, hey, you guys have parcels of property that have been repossessed due to tax reasons that you could go in and buy for the back taxes, and then you have the dirt itself. Is the purpose of this program making it so that the county receives this income back, as opposed to you acquiring land, you know,
Well,
on the cheap?
No, that's a great question. The most dangerous thing for a developer is to have the time in the state of Washington between the time you tie up the land and the time you're able to go vertical. A lot of things can go wrong, and it costs a whole bunch of money to hold on to that. So, you know, and I'm going to kind of go back to the original thought. It's going to eliminate 40% of the cost of the housing. That's where the 40% savings in the rent is going to come. So I'm not saying that there wouldn't be any profit in renting the home. It's just that I don't have to spend 40% of the money. And the only reason it's a good idea for you guys is because you get the whole thing back. No normal person would make this, you know, decision. You know, let me build a few $1 million worth of homes on your land that would best serve your most needy people, and then you can have it back in a couple decades. So that's if I didn't give it back, it would be a very greedy idea. But I think, nobody's told me I'm greedy to do this because, especially with the transparency of me not taking a dime during the whole construction period. The company will make money as rents start coming in, but it won't be, significant money. It will cover the costs. And there will be services that will be provided from the clubhouse. There's a lot of entities that would love to. It's extremely efficient to service with, we talk about government, mental health, all these things. So efficient to service people when you have a community of people who basically have a mandate that you need to go to a meeting a month. If you live here, you get essentially discounted rent. So you're going to go to a meeting. And if somebody sticks out, then the government's going to know, or, a government provider is going to know that they've been cared for, have options.
I like the creativity that you've come up with. I will say that I feel that there is some speculation in the presentation, which is you have to. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
get it. You have to. And having said that, there's a part of me that is questioning whether or not we want the county to get into managing that type of stuff. Is that a role that we should get into? And then there's another part of me that says, I do believe that we should interact with citizens and come up with solutions.
I have a great response, or I have a response. Do you think we should just keep going the way that we've gone?
No, absolutely not. So,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
So
saying.
it's going to take real creativity, and there's a lot of, I'm sorry to say it this way, but a lot of people could have this idea, but they don't have the horsepower to go down to the bank and borrow the $3 or $4 million it's going to take. And they don't have credibility because they've got a track record of unscrupulous background. I've got a stellar character. I have gone bankrupt. I have done that before, but there's nobody in town that's going to tell you that I owed them money because all the subcontractors, I paid them. And so I've had difficulty, but I think I've lived with integrity. But I think it's a great opportunity, but there's no hard feelings if you guys don't choose to do it. But I can't think of a better way that you could lend a piece of ground. And I don't think the county needs the money to sell. If you sold a piece of land and you put it out there, it would be an interesting rule if the state of Washington said no municipality could hold on to excess land inventory for more than 2 years. I mean, I don't think that's a stupid rule because every municipality has excess land and they all could be developed, and they would be if they got in the hands of private people probably. So I just think it's a creative thing because I believe you guys have money that you need to spend towards housing. And I think you have access to a couple pieces of land, or the city of Longview does. And I think it would be something we'd all be really proud that we were associated with. But, I'm willing to put myself under accountability, and I'm going to have to encumber very significant assets to do this. It's not like I'm just going to skate along and have nothing at risk. I'm going to put my name and millions of dollars on the line until these start to rent. And then it's going to be a great idea in the rearview mirror that will manage itself with good management. It won't manage itself, but I've got good management.
Well, I think that, it sounds like a great idea. I guess I would have to, I have the same concerns about whether or not the county could even do this legally. The other question, I guess, would be tying up a piece of land for 40 years. I'm wondering how many pieces of property does the county own right now that we've held on to for 40 years or 20 years that's been sitting vacant? I'm not sure that I know that there's any, but I don't know that there's not either. So the speculation side of it for $1 a year or $1 a month would be, I'm sure, on a legal issue, be looked at as a gifting of public funds, which is definitely against the law. So I don't know how we would get around that.
I'm very flexible. And if we went down the road and then decided to not do it, I at least know that I tried. And, I think we need to at least try. If we can't come to a fair legal way of doing it, I'll tell you, one of the things I've thought about is I thought, my architect isn't going to probably fight and compete and beat every other architect away, but there's a lot of architects who would probably love to be associated with it that would do exactly to the design of this, what the city of Longview did to the cottage home development. It's really a poor ordinance that they've developed because they didn't have any builders that were able to contribute to the design of what they have. It's ridiculous. I'm so incensed at I think the lack of builder input on the ordinance they have. So one of the things when you get too many chiefs in the kitchen or too many chefs, it could be weird, because what if you do it and you say, hey, you've got to use this architect and this engineer and this excavator, and they all three hate each other. And then I end up with a big mess because, so I don't know how that works out. That's just a practical question. I know that I don't get to choose everybody, but because the prevailing wage portion needs to be done according to the existing rules. But I think that there's ways that could be addressed. And I think that the base idea is sound and it has integrity. And it, just like almost everything else, you can do something with integrity or you can do it without integrity. And I know that you guys are going to do it with integrity, and there's no other way I would do it either. And if we go down the road and we decide not to do it, or you decide not to do it, it's fine. I'm learning a lot just trying.
Well, I will tell you, like I said, I want to echo my first statement that I commend you for coming to us with this.
Absolutely.
And all good ideas start right here. We're doing what we're doing, brainstorming and talking about it and hashing out, some of the details, what we can and can't do, and working within those parameters. So I hope you're not taking this line of questioning as
No.
not interested. It's just there's some clarification points and things that we need to look into, in my personal opinion, before we decide to take any steps forward. But having said that, I think that this is a good step forward, because you're right, we can't continue in the direction that we're headed. The state is not helping us when it comes to affordable housing. So it's going to be, I truly believe it's going to be up to us, the local governments, working with citizens to come up with solutions to these problems. And this is a step in that direction. Whether we go with it or not,
Right.
whether we modify the plan, whatever the situation is, this is a step in that direction. I think it's good.
I think as history is written and looked at centralized control, I think it's not served the people well. So I think decentralized is a much better thing. It's crazy to me that we've got national building codes and then we've got state building codes, and yet there's things, if you brought in all the main builders in Cowlitz County for the last 15 years, they would say this and this and this. Why can't we build 2x4 homes? Why? It's impossible. You haven't seen one built in years, in decades. They say it's because of energy code. I would love to be able to build 2 homes that are identical, one with 2x4 and one with 2x6, and do a scientific experiment to see if that energy code really does make a big difference. I don't know if it makes any difference. I really wonder about things like that. And so I think that decentralized is the way to go. And I think you have to be creative. And if you're going to be creative, you have to be with people that can articulate their ideas and be flexible. And I'm willing to do the way that you show me how to do it, whatever it is. I'm not trying to make money, but I'm going to be very proud of this, or I'm not going to do it, And what you said about the siding, I don't disagree with you, but I will tell you there's a longevity differential between wood-based sawdust T111 and then concrete siding. If a kid throws a baseball against concrete siding, he can break it, and he probably won't break the T111. But other than that, the weather is not going to affect concrete siding. So I'm a huge fan of it after using it for the last 25 years. So thank you so much. Dave, do you have any other thoughts or whatever?
No, I think it's a good idea. And I'd be happy to help out with it.
Dave did help me design a couple townhomes that I probably could move ahead with a little lot I've got on Hudson and Longview, and I probably need to do that in 2026 just to show what they could look like. But I hope that we can have further conversations. Thanks for allowing this meeting.
Yeah, appreciate it, Larry. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
I heard some basic questions, which I think is legitimate. I'll try and find some answers or we can report it so we at least know them.
Yeah.
Okay. We're running. Flo, let's just not drag, we're running pretty late today. There's no decisions going to be made on this today. If you have a comment on it, you're welcome to make it. Okay.
Thank you. Larry, first I want to say I appreciate your heart that you want to build for the people that need this, the lower income. I really do. But I have had extensive experience with contracting and also maintaining rental units. My grandmother had rental units up in Lakewood and had the military rent from them for decades. So I'm aware of the upkeep. And what I need to tell you that I have one big fear, and that is you will get this after 40 years. And I cannot tell you how much I want to tell you that what you're going to get is a large headache. I don't care what kind of material you use, it will degrade. I want to tell you right now, a roof will not last over 40 years. It just doesn't happen. The electrical and plumbing also will have problems. If a roof doesn't last, the structure won't last because of the elements. Also, unless you have an HOA and you have control over the people and some sort of guidance, you're going to find that you have possibly the people that are not going to care for these things, these units. You just have to be very, very careful with this. I see it as a huge red flag for the county to get into this. They're going to be competing with other people who are renting, other people who are building. So you are going to be competing. Remember the structure that was going to be built by the fairgrounds? That didn't go through because we were going to compete with a local person, a local, hotel type thing. And we didn't want to compete with a local person. And this would be the same thing. You're taking over. You're actually getting into a field that I think government shouldn't be in. They don't need to be in retail. Is that the word I want to use? But anyways, I just want to say over and over again, look what you're going to inherit after 40 years. I really think it's going to be a massive headache that you will have to put a lot of money in to upgrade to be habitable again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Flo.
Anything else?
I'm gonna respond real quick to that because those are good questions. If that's a concern, I think it'd be a very, I just proposed a 40-year term with it. People know that mortgage would be paid off in 30 years. If you say that every roof needs to be replaced within the last 8 years before it goes back, that's totally fine. That wouldn't scare me. I think that the other thing is almost everybody in Longview Kelso lives in a house that's over 40 years old. And they could go out and look at the things that I've maintained for 17 years. All those subdivisions I showed you were over 20 years old. They look great, And what I say, this doesn't sound very good, but a strong manager of an owned property is like a benevolent dictator compared to an HOA, which is a misguided group of people that have all different kinds of ideas. But good management teams want to continue to maintain the property and they want to make money. They want people to have good lives. And so it's not going to be poorly managed and it would be returned to you in good condition. And you'll be smartest if you just sold it or, let somebody else continue to use it like the housing authority. So you have, it'd be a great problem to have $9 million you didn't know what to do with, you know, or an opportunity. But thank you. You guys have a good one.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to, before I bring David up here? Okay, David, why don't we move on to the next item?
Afternoon, everyone. David Berger from the prosecutor's office. So back in February, you guys had a presentation from the Public Facilities District for an indoor multipurpose facility.
Can you pull that mic just a little bit closer?
Yeah, sorry. Is that better? Okay, so I think it was February 26th, the PFD came here, gave a presentation. They've been talking to you as things have gone on. And they gave kind of an overview, had a PowerPoint presentation and a video of like the indoor multipurpose facility. The idea would be for indoor sports and auto shows and that type of thing. And to move further down that path, their attorney, Bronson Potter, has been in touch with me. Kind of the next step, if you're wanting to move in that direction, would they need access to county land because the building would be on county land. And they need access to be able to go onto the land and study it and prepare like a more concrete design and budget. And so Bronson sent me an interlocal agreement and an explanatory email, and then I reviewed it. And I had some edits and recommendations, and he agreed to those. And then I said that I thought that the legal vehicle to get them to be able to get access to the land is something called a land use license, something that's revocable by the county. It's like a limited right where they can come on, and it's less than a lease. It's like they have a legal right to go on the property for the purposes that we outline in the license. So I presented our form of that to Bronson. He was good with it. So then he and I went back and forth and kind of fine-tuned the interlocal and the license, and then we prepared a draft. And then I said what I needed to do next was come and have a workshop with you guys to explain everything and make sure that this is, if you had any questions but that this would be the next step in the process. And I know Bronson's sitting right there. If you had any questions for him, I think he'd probably be willing to come up, so. Yeah.
You know, you sent a copy of it to us, and I reviewed it with your comments on there, and I didn't see anything that gave me pause. My colleagues may have looked at something that has something, but
I didn't have any red flags.
Me neither. It was pretty straightforward.
yeah.
Yeah, at some point, if there's no questions, and if, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, Bronson?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Bronson Potter, and I'm the attorney representing the Public Facilities District. And I think what David said is right, is we presented to you a few months ago a master plan that we developed, and part of the master plan includes this indoor multi-purpose facility. And that's a great idea, that's a great concept, but really to talk further about it in a meaningful way, we need to develop the idea better. And so what this agreement calls for is for the Public Facility District to come up with a design and programming for the site. So we would prepare 30% design, and we would do that at our expense. The only thing that we need from the county is the license to access the property for survey, level 1 environmental assessment, that kind of thing. And so at the conclusion of the development of the 30% design work, we'll be in a much better position to give you a cost estimate for what this, if this is going to be developed, this is what we're talking about cost-wise. So it's just, for me, it's the next logical step in determining whether or not it's in the county's interest and the public's interest and the PFD's interest to take this project further.
And we didn't have to go through this for phase one because we already had the property and it was already there.
Exactly.
It exists.
Yeah. So phase one is we're improving new HVAC, that kind of thing, just systems that you need to replace or improve over time. Audio, lighting, a slight expansion for some breakout rooms, but we already have that. It's already under the lease, so. So this agreement is really just focused on phase two, the indoor facility.
And David, what do you need from us? Like a motion approval or just authority to move forward with it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could vote to authorize the chairman to sign something substantially in the form of what we've presented. Or we could run it over to a Tuesday meeting and you can approve it then. This was a draft. I don't know if you're okay with the map as is, or if you wanted a different map, or I think
it works. We can,
all right.
yeah.
So,
I would run it over to a Tuesday meeting and then we can approve it in there or take a look at it in
Yep.
there.
I think
Okay.
I don't know if the administrator from the county side has been designated.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, good catch. One thing we needed to know was the page 3 of what I sent you. It says for the administration, for purposes of communicating between the PFD and the county and administering their cooperative undertakings in this agreement, the project manager of the PFD shall be the PFD's lead person and blank shall be the lead person for the county. So we need to know who from the county would be like the contact person for access to the land and if there's any issues or that kind of thing.
Would that be I'm kind of looking at Savannah, would that be our public works area? Or Kim?
So I guess it's just
I thi-
land at this point, but so you could either do like Mike Moss or Savannah, or you could theoretically do Kim, but it's just the land at this point. So,
We just put a name in the blank and we're happy.
Yeah.
right. And you
Okay.
can also, yeah.
The only thing I think Kim's always on site. I don't know if that
That would
probably makes it easier,
yeah,
make
that'd
it
be the
work.
logical way. to
would
do
be
it.
my guess.
And historically, they maintained it, mowed it, I mean.
Okay,
But we don't carry the weight, whatever the board thinks.
yeah.
And I'm familiar with the use of it also.
Sounds like we're all
Yeah.
okay with Kim.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
Kim, okay, that's fine. Sounds good. And I did want to talk just like big picture risks, like in a brief executive
Sure.
session, but that's all I had.
We
So,
can do that.
okay.
How, 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, we could probably say 10 minutes and the basis was just 42, 30, 110 subsection. I guess 1H subsection little I, a little 3. It's difficult to decipher, but basically the legal risks of an action overall.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll do that. Adjourn to executive session, 10 minutes. We'll review that. Okay. Okay, back from executive session, no decisions were rendered. I think we don't have anything else to decide today. We're got the direction forward. We'll find that on our agenda. Okay, good.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner.
You guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Gentlemen, we still got a couple things. We wanted to review. City of Longview sent us a request requesting letter of support for the city of Longview Safe Streets and Roads for their Beach Street corridor. Did you want to chat about that a minute?
Yeah, I was asked if I'd take a look at this thing and I told him, go ahead and send it to me. I'd take a look at it. It came from Chris Collins. My gut instinct from what few City of Longview meetings I've attended, it hasn't been a very popular idea. I don't know.
I've kind of gathered that too, that I wasn't sure the public was really up on this, so I like to help out our cities, but I don't, if they don't have, I guess what I'm not comfortable that they have the public support or buy-in
Yeah,
for it, so I don't know. I'm really kind of stuck as what stance to take, help the city or.
you know, the presentation that I saw where they, to fix their problem with, what they call the drainage ditch goes down the middle of Beach Street, to open that thing up so that they don't have that box covered in there anymore, open it up on both sides and supposedly beautify that stretch between what is, I can't remember the address on this thing, but to open that thing up, somebody asked them in the meeting, what are you gonna do if some kid riding a bike falls in there and drowns? Now that you open that thing up, because there's gonna be water in there all the time.
Yeah.
My initial instinct when I read that letter was with all the issues that we're facing, spending money on bike lanes is, I personally can't justify it. Granted, I'm probably ignorant to a lot of things that are going on over there, but when I look at what's taking place, I wouldn't say that that's a priority. So,
Okay.
and I would definitely agree with you that I don't think the public buy-in and support is there.
So do you think a proper response is if we see the public support that, or just say we're just not interested?
I personally would like a little bit of time to talk with Jennifer.
Okay.
You know, to get a little bit more information, because just reading that letter, like I said, based on the limited amount of information that I have, my gut reaction is, why would we spend that money on bike lanes? Because I drive through town all the time, and realistically, I see more people riding their bikes on the sidewalks than I do in the bike lanes that have already been established for bike lanes.
I went down it this afternoon just to look at it, because they've taken out one lane and made bike lanes into, and I gotta tell you, I can't believe it's safer than it was before.
As a driver, I feel more uncomfortable. I can't imagine
Yeah.
somebody on a bike.
Yeah.
I've lived and driven that road my entire career between my house and the mill, working at fiber. I've never seen a tragic accident on there. I mean, in wintertime at the corner there.
I was questioning that too, Commissioner Farrell, because I was reading something in here about identified as a high risk
Yeah, problem.
pattern of serious and fatal collisions. I'm trying to
Yeah.
recall.
I think the worst thing I ever saw in there was one winter on the corner there by the school, St. Helens School, where you turn that corner and everything was covered with ice. I came around the corner and there was a car sitting on its top. It was completely upside down,
Yeah.
sitting there. And so there's some guy racing around the corner in the ice, and he must have hit that curb and just flipped that car upside down. But the guy was standing outside the car when the cops got there. I don't know of any accidents where there was an injury on that stretch of road. But, and that's not to say it didn't happen, because I'm not always there, but at the same time, I struggle with the thought that spending that kind of money on that stretch of road in there.
Yeah.
I really struggle with the bike lane issue, because I can name one time I've seen somebody riding in the bike lane the right direction. Almost everybody's ignoring the bike lanes. They're either on the sidewalk still, or they're out in the road going the wrong direction on the wrong side of the road.
Well, Can I suggest that we just delay this a week, give us each a chance to do some research on it and then readdress it next Wednesday?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And I'll see if I can follow up with Chris Collins and or Jennifer and see where they're coming from here. Especially with what they see as public support for this. Because I haven't seen it at this point.
Just write me a note so I don't forget it. Okay, do I have anything else on that? Okay, I think the last item is an executive session for us three on, I guess you'd call it performance of a public employee. Let's set, I don't want to overbook us and I don't want to have peace in, but let's set maybe 15 minutes and we'll go from there.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 10 minutes until 4:14 p.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 10 minutes until 4:23 p.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 4:29 p.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 4:34 p.m. 4:34 p.m.
Okay, back from executive session, no decisions rendered. I don't believe we have any more business, so we will adjourn.